It's Thursday, May 9th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, it's all about that budget. Town Council leadership and the Director of Finance join us to break down the fiscal year 2020 budget, timelines, trends, and action plan. Now, for a look at municipal and legislative news. The tasks in the budget action calendar for fiscal year 2020 are ahead of schedule, and the first read of the appropriation orders for the Town of Barnstable operating budget 2020 have been read into the record at last week's Town Council meeting. For information on the fiscal year budgets and to review, find them on the town's open budget website at budget.townofbarnstable.us. Town Council President Jim Crocker joins us in studio to update us on the agenda timeline for next week's Town Council budget meeting. The Town of Barnstable is literally right in the heart of budget season. Town Council will be taking up the operating budget at its next meeting. With me today, Town Council President Jim Crocker. Lots of work in front of you guys.
We do, and we're grateful to have you work the TV and try to explain what's coming our way, because this is the real heart and soul of the budget and where taxpayers get to see their money at work.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, the budget process obviously is ongoing. It's year-round, as the town manager always says. It's, we never stop that. But, capital improvement projects have already gone through their process. The operating budget, tell viewers really what this is. Is this just salaries, or is this something else besides just the people?
No, it really goes to what it takes to operate each and every independent department. And people forget, sometimes we'll be talking about departments and they'll say, well, gee, where's sewer? And that's because sewer has its own identity as an enterprise account. So these are really the parts of the budget that come out of taxpayers as a general, and they are for the general good of the town itself.
Right. So we have two. We have the general fund, and then the enterprise funds. So the difference between those?
Well, the general fund is all raised by taxpayer. The enterprise is all run by the action of the activity. Okay. So in other words, any payments into sewer or any payments into, any of the marina operations or things like that. Anything that's specific to a use that isn't enjoyed by all, but is a use that our constituents have come used to enjoying on the Cape and Islands.
Right. So let's dig right in, because it's 580 pages of budget, and I think the town council's gotten that full piece. It is available on our website. But for the agenda, what's coming up on the agenda?
Well, we took the time to ask our treasurer, Mark Milne, to come forward last week to actually outline to the councilors how we intend to just do a little skipping around so that we have an orderly fashion to answer the questions and to have a certain amount of employees on hand to assist in any of the clarities that are going to be requested by the councilors. Councilors seem to take great pains in preparing for this portion of the budget. They really have great concerns about what their constituents' beliefs are about how DPW is working or how planning and growth is working. And they really want to say, well, gee, can you tell me, are you spending more in advertising? Are you spending more in consulting? And they really dig into the pieces pretty well. So everybody's going to have to expect that there'll be some questions, and that we'll answer them all.
Okay, so let's get started.
Yeah, well, by jumping around,
right.
We are doing some unusual things, but it is starting with planning and development. It's on to community services thereafter. Government access TVs, number 3. Hyannis Youth Center, inspectional services. We're jumping over a few, and then we go right into the town council budget, the town manager's budget, administrative services, employee benefits package, library and tourism. So it hits the host of them. But I think you'll see the main operating budgets are usually consumed, the largest being police, the second largest being DPW. Right. So those are not intended to be addressed on this particular first night.
Okay.
But these are a variety of operations that we kind of sometimes seamlessly see in our day-to-day activity. But people will have questions, and constituents have always had questions. So councils remember well when it's that time of year how to put a particular question in place about library services, Hyannis Youth and Community Services, and so forth.
Right. And when you reviewed the budget, obviously, again, it is available on the website. Anybody can view this. There's increases in some places, decreases in other places. When you're looking at those kinds of things, especially for increases, nobody likes to see increases. It's just one of those things. But when you do see those are where your questions are formed. Is this a good place for our money to increase services?
Yeah, well, you're hitting on some very valid points, but unfortunately, it's even deeper than that. We might see a budget that goes up, but services may be decreased. So there's always this, okay, how do I compare it to last year? What should my constituents think will be the services that come from this department? Oftentimes, we have retirements that force budgets to increase because there has to be an anticipated payout for the retirement. So all of a sudden, you're saying, gee, that's going up, and yet I thought we were down a unit in overall. So there's reasons for it in every direction, and the counselors are very understanding of this, and they will dive into the book with good faith and the best interest at heart.
Right, and let's talk a little bit about departments overall. So community services strikes me as one of those, is where, and planning and development, with the reorganization pretty much complete as we've gone through that for departments and divisions, community services has a lot of divisions under it.
Oh, it's huge. It's one of our larger, as far as reaching out and touching the community in a number of ways. It's one of our larger headings. And we're very fortunate. Lynn does a great job up there, and yet she's also in charge of someone who's supposed to bring forward all the information to us, informational services as well. So there's a great number of issues that come out of that, and you can't ever underestimate the value of what it is when she goes to work or when she focuses on an issue and how it should be impacted. She brings things forward for me to consider putting on the agenda because they're of interest that should go community-wide. So her efforts are large.
And with the reorganization last year as well, planning and development picked up a lot of divisions.
Planning and development has a very big function, and it should be a function that is an upside-down ice cream cone. It should start at the top, but all the effects should continue to funnel outwards as it rolls through the system. And that's what we were finding. It wasn't tripod enough such that it really included the good works getting all the way back into the community. So now by changing up some of these issues, we believe that they're complementary to each other for the services, and we believe it'll get some of the action out on the street, which is where the taxpayers get to take advantage of their money at work for them.
Right. And how do you want residents to get involved in this process?
Well, residents should always contact their counselors. Residents who have a feeling or have talked with other residents and they feel they're short a need or they're even excited about something that's come forward, that's necessary to keep your counselor understanding of a particular issue when they review one of these headings and whether they see that there's another adjustment responding to that or a decline, which suggests that somebody missed what it might be and how it might be affecting the market.
So I'm going to suggest to hydrate because it'll be a long meeting.
well, it's a great one, though. I got to tell you, to watch the heart and soul of the town come together is really exciting.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Finance Director Mark Milne breaks down the steps to understanding the operating budget for the town and some of the trends that affect each fiscal year's budget. Another important meeting coming up for Town Council next week, and it's going to be budget, all budget. With me today, Finance Director Mark Milne, who's going to actually break down this amazingly large document for the town of Barnstable. We have a big budget.
Yes, we do. We're exceeding $200 million now for an operating budget on top of a $34 million capital plan that was just implemented or approved. We'll be implementing that July 1st. This budget includes about $177 million for the general fund and another $33 million for enterprise fund operations. So we're well above $200 million for an annual operating budget. And a lot of people don't realize just the size of the town of Barnstable.
Right. Yeah. And then, you look at the size of the book, right? So all the town councilors got this printed copy. There is a copy on our website for every resident. So we don't do this in the dark. So let's just start with a timeline of how this budget process works.
Sure. I mean, it's really building the budget is a year-round process. You know, we start off with evaluating prior year's results. We do the 5-year financial forecast, which we've discussed, and then based upon the results from both of those analysis, we start building the operating budget around the October timeframe is when we really get into sending out instructions to department managers, asking them to review their operations, submit any additional funding requests that they feel are necessary. And then we go through several months evaluating all of those and meeting with department heads and ultimately coming to, you know, what the town manager proposes for the subsequent year's operating budget. So this is a year-round process that we're involved in.
Right. And I'm not sure all residents understand that this process is dictated by our charter. For one, and then obviously some of the state rules
laws.
that are out there, state laws. And as we kind of come through this process, we're near the tail end. We'll get a reprieve for a few months until it starts all back up again. But this process now is, with town council, is they've read most of this into the record in their previous meeting for this coming meeting. So when we look at this budget, how does the average citizen take a bite out of this? It's really overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. I understand that, and you know, but we're trying to be as transparent as possible, provide as much information as we can. And one of the things that we do is we break this budget down into a summary document, which will be going up on the town's website soon, to try to digest this 500-page book down into about 50 pages. But if anybody wants to go on the website and look at the 500-page document, it is there, and we've broken it down into chapters, so they can just look at a particular chapter that they may be interested in, whether it's a department or the financial summaries. They can go to one of those chapters and look at that. And I would recommend, if you're really interested in the numbers, just look at the financial summaries. But if you want to get into understanding what each one of our departments does on a day-to-day basis, we have a really good description as to what that is under each individual department's section.
All right. And let's start really at the beginning. You do have a guide to the budget. What does that entail?
So the guide, it basically provides the reader some instructions as to how to review this document. Because it's a 500-page document, we felt that it was good to put right at the front of the document a guide as to how to read it, what each one of these various sections include. And so we found that to be helpful. We started doing it about 3 years ago, and we've gotten quite a bit of positive feedback on that. Helps a reader better focus on the particular areas they may be interested in.
Right, and one of the, this was my weekend reading because, rain on Cape Cod for, days on end.
Thing to do than to read that.
Right, but the introduction and overview, again, the history of this town, I mean, there really is some in-depth understanding of how this town has gotten to be as large as it has.
Yes, we added that about 10 years ago because we thought it was really interesting information for someone, especially for somebody new to the town, to learn a little bit more about the town's history. And so we do go into, it's about 3 or 4 pages of introductory material that talks about how each village came to be and how they came together eventually. And so that is very interesting. Actually, we plagiarized a lot of that information from the 375th anniversary report that was issued. So we thought that was really interesting information to include in the budget document, and people have appreciated that.
Right, and square miles of what we have here in the town of Barnstable, from the west villages, where Marston's Mills, Katuitt, and then all the way back into Hyannis. The history of, again, like you said, all of them coming together is fascinating. Yes. As one town. I do still believe that millbillies still think they're unto themselves out there, but
the western side of town, I think they all feel that way. So.
Exactly. So let's.
Which I belong. I'm a resident out there. So.
Exactly. You're a millbilly too, right?
Yes, I am.
So the financial pieces of this that I kind of want to dig into a little bit is the financial forecast, 5 years, There's some trends that kind of manifest themselves into each year's budget. What did we see this year that kind of, surfaced over the past year from 2019 or even 2018 into 2020?
Well, what it's showing us is that with the economy recovering as it is, we're really seeing an uptick in activity in many areas across the board as far as our revenues are concerned. Our motor vehicle excise tax revenue has grown substantially since the days of the economic downturn. We've gone from $5.5 million to close to $8 million a year in annual collections. Meaning a lot people are buying a lot more new vehicles more frequently,
right,
and more expensive vehicles. We're seeing that growth take place. Our building permit activity has increased over the past few years. We're seeing it in a number of permits as well as the new construction that's taking place. New growth has started to grow again, where we've had several years where new growth was actually declining. But over the past few years, we're actually seeing it grow again. So that's all positive for the town of Barnstable. And so what the 5-year forecast is showing that across the board, almost entirely across the board, our revenues are improving. And that's just indicative of the economy right now.
And does it account for assessing rates as the economy gets better? Property rates or property actually is more valuable, from my understanding. So I think that must be trending up as well.
Yes, we have gone from about $13 billion in total assessed valuation townwide to close to $15 billion. I think we may actually exceed $15 billion next year. So it'll be the highest. I think the highest it's ever been is around $16 billion back in the early 2000s before that recession took place, dot-com recession. But we're definitely trending back up as far as property values go. You see it with home prices on the market. It's very difficult to find anything under $300,000 in the town of Barnstable these days. So yeah, property values are increasing across the board, which has kept our tax rates low. We're still below $10 per thousand when it comes to a tax rate, which is some of the lowest in the state of Massachusetts. I think the entire Cape, the tax rates across the board and the towns in Cape Cod are some of the lowest in the state as a result of the high property value down here.
Wow, that's really interesting. The other piece of that too that we've noticed, just as Channel 18 and some of the things that we cover, is that commercial property is starting to move now as well. I think that must help. We're seeing
it. It started with you saw the resurgence of the redevelopment of many of the local car dealerships over the past few years. You drive around town and every dealership has invested new dollars into their properties. We saw that. We're seeing the new Cape Cod 5 headquarters going up out on 132. You're seeing the mall right now, which looks almost like a war zone. But that is taking place. We just entered into an agreement with WS Development, who's going to redevelop the Cape Town Plaza, and now called The Landing, going forward. So yeah, it's an exciting time in the town of Barnstable when it comes to commercial redevelopment.
The east end of Main Street, the housing developments that are going down in that area, the Furman building being redone, and then Independence Park as well.
Independence Park as well. Yep, a lot of new residential building going up out there.
Right. It just it's good news for the town and some of the services and programs. So before we leave today, because we're going to do another one of these sessions for next week before town council, I really want to talk a little bit about the actual difference between general and enterprise funds, because I do believe there is some confusion of what's a general fund and what's an enterprise fund, and you can break that down in people speak for folks, and I think that's helpful.
I'll try. Yeah. What's confusing, I think, is I think people have the impression that an enterprise fund has to be self-supporting, number one. And that's not, that is a concept behind adopting an enterprise fund. You can mandate that it be self-supporting if you want it to be, but it does not have to be. And all an enterprise fund is a separate accounting tool that we use to account for all the activities associated with that particular enterprise. That's all it is. It's an accounting tool. And so we keep all the financial activity associated with those programs separate from general fund activities, and we report on it that way. What does that do for us? It allows us to measure the profitability of that particular program or programs. It allows us to set user rates so that we can determine what's full cost recovery and whether or not a subsidy is required. And we do, under our administrative code, all of our public works enterprise operations are expected to be full cost recovery, and they are. Our community service types of enterprise fund operations like golf, HYCC, MEA operations like marinas and Sandy Neck Park are not necessarily required to be 100% self-supporting. Most are, with the exception being the HYCC being the biggest one where we do need to provide some general fund support just because of the nature of its use. Right. I mean, it's open to the public. There, other than the ICE activity, there's a lot of other things that can be done in there besides the ICE activities. It's not going to be self-supporting.
Right,
by
free
renting
after
out the
school
ice.
Doesn't have a cost.
Yeah, and you know, we could price ourselves out of the market. If we wanted to make it self-supporting, we would have to triple the ice rates, per hourly ice rate, and it's just going to put us out of the market. And that doesn't do any good. So that's the reason why those community service types of enterprise fund operations are not required to be self-supporting under our administrative code. However, it's useful for us to know what is the subsidy that the general fund has to provide for running that program. It's good information.
Right. And the general fund is every other department.
It's every other department. Mainly your
Right.
general fund is, you know, all your other public works operations, your police, and your our school department. Those are really the big three. They take up 90% of our general fund expenditures are comprised of those municipal operations, and educational type functions are all combined within those three specific areas. That's where a majority of our general fund goes, to those three services.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to bringing you back in here.
Sure. I look forward to it.
Excellent. We'll
All
see you
right.
next week,
Okay.
Mark.
Thank you.
you. Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Are you interested in helping those with pets during an emergency or disaster? Cape Cod Disaster Animal Response Team has organized their 9th annual event to be held this Saturday, May 11th, from 9 to 3 at the West Barnstable Fire Station. Topics to be discussed and trained on: shelter design and setup, communications, registration, and other paperwork, along with sessions. What to do if you lose your dog, Reiki, and massage for your pets. Restraints and CPR and first aid and search and rescue drills. New volunteers over the age of 18 are welcome, and the event is open to the public. Contact CC Dart at 774-327-3368 for more information. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.